Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We are going to get started here in just a couple of minutes, but before we do, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items with those of you that have already come into the room. So today's live event will have a few different aspects to it. We were experiencing some single sign-on issues earlier today, so we have sent out a direct link to today's live feed. You can also find the direct link for today's live feed on the event page where you'll see the chat and closed captions as well. If for some reason your live feed window is not populating for you, the best thing to do is to simply click on that link. It will open a new window for you, and you will be able to watch and listen to today's live event on a separate window. Then if you would like to come back and chat in any questions that you might have or view the closed captions at the bottom of the page, you are able to do so there. We will not be really sharing any presentations today. Today will be more of a panel discussion Q&A format to really give the audience the opportunity to ask questions of our presenters. You will notice that there is a chat pod on the left-hand side of your screen marked chat. Again, this will be the best way to communicate with us should you have any questions regarding today's material. All questions pertaining to the material will be retained, and we will work them in throughout the entirety of today's event. We do have quite a few questions that were submitted both last webinar and as well as the follow-up survey that was sent out, so we will start with those. But please feel free at any point of today's webinar to go ahead and type in your questions there in the chat pod, and we will make sure to get them answered for you the best that we can. You will also notice that below the live feed window is the closed captions that will be running throughout the entirety of today's event. If you do experience any technical issues, please feel free to use the chat pod to let us know, and either myself or one of our customer service representatives will make sure to get you taken care of. You will also notice in the notes section above where the live player is, you will see our toll-free number as well as our email address there should you want to contact us that way with any technical issues. Again, we do have our note there that talks about Google Chrome users might experience some technical difficulties due to an update. You can either use Mozilla Firefox as that will give the best webinar experience, or you are more than welcome to click on the direct link that is at the bottom of that note section, and that will give you direct access to today's live feed. All right, we are going to get started here in just a moment, but before we do, I see quite a few of you have already typed in your location there in the chat pod. We do have over 800 people that have registered for today's event. We would like to find out a little more about our audience before we do get started, so if you have not done so, please take a few moments to type in your location where you are watching today's webinar from. That'll give us some great feedback from our audience and just kind of give us an insight as to the impact that we were able to make on today's webinar. Again, today's webinar will be a Q&A panel style discussion. We want to make sure that we answer as many questions as possible from the forensic community. So please make sure if you do have any questions to type them in the chat pod, and then we will be, again, answering questions that were submitted during the previous webinar. It is the top of the hour. I'm going to change some things on my end, and then we will get started momentarily. Thank you for joining us today. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Josh Vickers, and I'm with RTI International's Forensic Technology Center of Excellence. Today's webinar is the sequel from our first webinar, Marijuana or Hemp, from Farm Bill to Forensic Analysis, that we held on January 15th, 2020. We had such an amazing turnout and response. We were not able to answer everyone's questions during that webinar, so we have brought our 3 subject matter experts back, and we will be going through questions that were submitted, and we would love to hear other questions from the forensic community today as well. Again, we do have three presenters today, Ms. Renee Johnson, Mr. Mike Goodrich, and Dr. Sandra Rodriguez Cruz. So we'd like to introduce each of those right now. Ms. Renee Johnson is the Agricultural Policy Specialist at the Congressional Research Service. Her work at CRS covers on a range of agricultural and food production issues, including food safety regulation, as well as farm production and marketing on specialty crops, organic foods, and industrial hemp. She has worked on periodic Farm Bill legislation dating back to the 1990s across a range of professional capacities within both the private and public sectors. Prior to joining CRS in 2006, she worked as an industry market consultant, government contractor, academic researcher, and as a policy analyst within the federal government. She has a Master's of Science in Agricultural Economics from the University of Wisconsin and her bachelor's from the University of California at Berkeley. Mr. Mike Goodrich is the owner and president of Cornerstone Analytical Laboratories and director of analytical operations for Harvest Analytical Laboratories. He has worked as an analytical chemist for over 30 years, supporting many different regulatory environments, with the most experience with EPA and FDA. Over the years, he has worked with USP, AOAC, and NIOSH to develop and validate new methods for emerging industries. He is the Director of Analytical Operations at Harvest Analytical Laboratories and has been responsible for generating operating and quality procedures. Harvest Analytical was opened in support of the industrial hemp industries to provide accurate results to ensure the product safety and compliance. As an independent contract testing facility, he is tasked with providing farmers, processors, manufacturers, and the public information on the hemp products they are producing or consuming. Our last presenter and subject matter expert of the day is Dr. Sandra Rodriguez Cruz. She is a senior research chemist at the DEA Special Testing and Research Laboratory. She started her career with the DEA in 2002 and has analyzed thousands of cases and provided court testimony in state and federal jurisdictions. She serves as a subject matter expert at the DEA Academy in Quantico, Virginia, and has participated in the development of DEA laboratory policies such as measurement uncertainty, method validation, and sampling. She's also a subject matter expert on the use of LC-MS, DESI-MS, and DART-MS. Dr. Sandra Rodriguez Cruz has published numerous manuscripts in peer-reviewed journals and internal DEA publications. She has her Bachelor's of Science degree in chemistry from the University of Puerto Rico and her PhD in chemistry from the University of California at Berkeley. Her postdoctoral fellowship was from the Rowland Institute for Science, Harvard in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Just our quick disclaimer, the opinions, findings, and conclusions or recommendations expressed in this presentation are those of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect those of the Department of Justice. Any products and manufacturers discussed are presented for informational purposes only and do not constitute product approval or endorsement by the U.S. Department of Justice. And now, without any further ado, I would like to go ahead and kick off today's webinar. We are going to, again, be posting this webinar as a panel discussion, more of a Q&A style platform. That way we can give you, the audience, a chance to really get the questions answered in this hemp industry. So the first one we're going to pose is one that is not directly related, but it is one that everyone is having an impact with, and that is more of a CBD related question. So we're going to get that one first answered and out of the way, and then we'll move on. So Renee, I'm going to pose this question to you again, panel discussion, so everyone feel free to jump in. In the hemp definition, extracts is included. How does the 0.3% THC dry weight apply to extracts, which are typically oily or have solvents in them? And then just a follow-up question about possession of hemp products that do contain CBD. It seems they are legal to produce, or maybe not, but are they legal to possess?
So taking a step backward and just looking at what happened in the 2018 Farm Bill, it's very important to note that the 2018 Farm Bill explicitly preserved FDA's laws and authorities regarding food and consumer products. And that is in statute at 7 U.S.C. 1639R. It pretty much says, it pretty much says that FDA still has authority over products containing cannabis and cannabis-derived compounds that fall under their laws. And so the issue involving CBD at FDA is very complicated because it gets into issues about whether or not CBD or THC or any other cannabinoid are active drug ingredients in FDA-approved drugs, which would exclude them from being added to food and dietary supplements. And I'm not the expert in this field, but that is some of the things that FDA is currently reviewing as part of their, they actually have an open docket on accepting scientific data and information on products containing cannabis and cannabis-derived compounds that I would encourage folks to look at. There's over 4,000 comments there right now. It has a lot of good scientific information, but it is the information that FDA is looking at to determine how they're going to move forward with CBD products, particularly involving CBD ingredients in foods, feed, and ingestible products. There is some indication that possibly CBD in body products or cosmetics might be treated differently, but this is an issue that FDA is actively looking at now. And pretty much the day after the 2018 Farm Bill was signed, then Commissioner Gottlieb at FDA made it very clear in FDA statements that products containing CBD would be unlawful. However, as we all know, these products are readily available and they're sold online, in stores, ingestible forms, topical forms, smokable forms. There's lots of different forms of this. This really is an indication that FDA isn't actively enforcing this issue, but they have been doing various administrative efforts on this issue in terms of warning letters for companies that are selling these products. But it gets into, FDA's laws in terms of how, what is a prohibited act in terms of mislabeling and adulteration, in which suffice it to say that currently FDA continues to review how it's going to move forward with its policies regarding CBD or any other cannabinoid in various consumer products. And so with regard to this issue, I know a lot of you had asked questions about that kind of alluded to the legality and alluding to the definitions in terms of the 2018 Farm Bill defining hemp to include extracts and derivatives. A lot of people in the industry claim that this means that it's legal, but according to FDA statements and FDA's ongoing review, this question, there's not a clear answer to this question right now, other than to say that under FDA's policies and its interpretation of its laws, it is unlawful to market certain consumer products containing CBD and possibly other cannabinoids.
All right, thank you so much, Renee. We're going to throw our next question out to Mike. This is going to stay in more the legality and policy range, but a question for you, and again, everyone can chime in on this one. Did the agricultural community consider the impact that the 2018 Farm Bill would have on law enforcement and the forensic community?
Well, yeah, as far as the agricultural community goes and the CBD community, they would throw the question right back at law enforcement. But no, as far as what they did, they tried to get the product legal for CBD production and for industrial hemp, for all the things that industrial hemp are used for. And then, they're working with law. There's a lot of animosity between law and the agricultural side here. The forensic side is kind of on the outskirts, but they're working to better communicate. And so with the signs that go up on the farms, a lot of the farmers make sure they know all their local agents are well aware of what they're doing there, so there's no surprises. And, I think they're working to better work with everybody on this. And quite frankly, the community is really protective of hemp because, again, they don't want the stigma that comes, oh, they're doing something illegal, they're doing something shady. They want to bring it up to the forefront and they want to bring their products to market as legitimately as possible.
All right, thank you, Mike. Sandra, we have a question that I do remember from the live event. This one's coming from Alexis. It was geared specifically to your presentation. The question is there a reason you call the result inconclusive from the DEA protocol when the color test is pink? Wouldn't the GCMS data trump the color test since it's over 1% THC and therefore would be considered marijuana? We're trying to use this. We're trying to use only this semi-quant at our lab, but cannot see the justification for using the color test and calling something inconclusive if we have a greater than 1% result for the GCMS data. Further clarification would be appreciated.
Yes, I'll be happy to answer that question. And yes, it was probably the same person that submitted it earlier during the previous seminar. So there's multiple answers and reasonings behind our decision to call this inconclusive, and a lot of these were made in conjunction with our attorneys at DEA. And the first one of us is that we wanted to apply the entire analytical scheme, the microscopic, macroscopic examination, then the color test, and then the GCMS test, which lets us assess if the level of THC is above or below our decision limit. And the reason for that was because the micro and macro tells us, okay, we're dealing with material that has the characteristics, morphological characteristics of cannabis. Then we move into the color test. And the color test tells us what type of cannabis it is. Is it THC rich or is it CBD rich? So it tells us if we're looking at chemotype number 1 or chemotype number 3. Once we have determined that, then we proceed for the GCMS. We wanted to also fulfill multiple sampling requirements that we have in the DEA laboratories. We do have 2 sampling requirements, not only the 2 tests. I know this is not the same in many other laboratories. And probably the most important reason is that when we wanted that, when we put a report out to the customers, reporting a substance as marijuana, we wanted it to be supported by the 3 tests. We wanted it to be supported by the micro-macro analysis. We wanted the color test to be consistent with marijuana type material, chemotype number 1, and we wanted the THC results to be consistent. So we wanted such a result, which would state that the material is a controlled substance. We wanted such a result to be supported by 3 different tests.
All right, thank you, Sandra. Renee, I'm going to come back to you. We had talked about this a little before we had gotten started, and this is going to be a question about total THC. We know the Farm Bill says 0.3% Delta 9, and we also know that the USDA is going with total THC 0.3%, less than 0.3%. So what exactly should the community be looking at? Should we be referring to the Farm Bill or should we be referring to the USDA interim ruling?
So this is a question that many are looking to get a more definitive answer on. So when it came to Congress's actions in defining hemp, they defined it to mean the plant Cannabis sativa and any part of the plant, including the seeds thereof and all derivatives, extracts, cannabinoids, isomers, acids, salts, and salts of isomers, whether growing or not, with a Delta 9 THC concentration of not more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis. And since I'm not a technician, maybe there are things that I don't understand in terms of total THC and the acids and why these were included in USDA's regulatory framework. But this has been a long-standing long-standing question back in 2016 when DEA, USDA, and FDA issued a statement of principles on hemp. That document also included language about total THC, which got members of Congress and folks in the industry a bit concerned because they felt that at the time that it went outside the definition that was established in the 2014 definition of hemp, in the 2014 Farm Bill definition of hemp. And so in efforts to redefine hemp in the 2018 Farm Bill, they were trying to fix some of these things, and there were a lot of letters written at the time regarding the statement of principles and how it was not, members of Congress saying that it was not the intent of Congress to include total THC and not Delta 9 THC. This has been a long-standing issue, and it clearly was not fixed to Congress's satisfaction in the 2018 Farm Bill because USDA's now rulemaking includes total THC. And if you go through USDA's docket, which has about 4,500 comments on it to date, a number of industry concerns involve the definition of total THC, which they feel went outside Congress's intent in the 2018 Farm Bill. So this is an issue that will continue to be of concern for industry, and what remains to be seen is how USDA will potentially modify its regulatory requirements and whether or not they do, or whether or not this will require yet another act of Congress to further weigh in on this issue. There have, I believe, also been, some of this language has been part of court cases brought by the Hemp Industries Association versus DEA. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that HIA had commented on this issue back regarding the 2016 Statement of Principles. So clearly it is USDA's interpretation of how to implement their regulation in response to mandates from Congress. USDA has been working in consultation with DEA as Congress directed them to do. And so, this is just, there is no current legal determination on how to move forward. It's just one of those things that continues to be an issue that, and it remains to be seen how it will be resolved in the future.
All right, thank you so much. Mike, I'm going to come to you with the next question, and also if you wouldn't mind giving your side of things, how you're seeing either the Delta 9 or the total THC. But one question that came from the last webinar was asking, since you technically received a controlled substance for testing, the reported THC was around 2%. Did it have to be reported to law enforcement? Did the shipper have a DEA license? And that also comes back to the question, how can those in the forensic industry test products, quote unquote, made for legal hemp, since there seems to be a lack of traceability once the crop is deemed acceptable?
Okay, yes. As far as the shipping of samples, again, I'm not the lawyer on this, but we're counting on the concept that we are receiving samples that are believed to be within legal specifications. And so what we do is we wind up disposing all of our samples as if we're above the limit. They're all mixed, and then we send them off. As far as the products and such with the THC and total THC, again, we've got a lot of states that are making their own limits. And so we get a lot of, as a lab, we've taken the stand that we run the samples. The samples that are sent to us are the results are the person that sent it to us. As of right now, there's not a DEA reporting mechanism. Fortunately, we've not had anything that has come in that has been grossly upside down where we're getting a 20% THC concentration. So so far we've been fortunate in not having that. But as far as the shipping, we've seen FedEx has decided they don't want to ship any hemp or hemp-related products. The USPS has come out and said they will certainly ship any hemp or hemp product. And the Postal Service is even, they've got directives on that as far as sending concentrates, as long as they're, sample size and not large quantities. And so, again, we're trying to work within the system to be as upfront and transparent as possible. But again, there's some of these areas that they just haven't clarified. Within the Farm Bill, once hemp, always hemp. If it's made from a lot that is determined, again, that's a big issue because now it was determined in Tennessee to be legal hemp product. Once it's carried into Kentucky, it's no longer a legal hemp product. And so does that certification stay with it once it crosses a straight line? And so these are all things that, there's a lot of people working with a lot of our legislators, both state and federal, to help clean up a lot of these issues.
All right. Thank you, Mike. There's a question that came in from David asking, are there any commercially available analytical standards for marijuana, such as NIST traceable, ISO, etc.?
There's a lot of ISO groups coming out with more and more each day, and NIST does have some traceable standards that they're working in the process of having ready to do. And so there's not there's a few groups that are doing the round robin type standardized tests that are all coming from ISO labs. And so most people are gearing the ISO 17025 for their individual standards. And so what they're looking at is actual individual acids or, decarboxylated standards that are actually the individual cannabinoids and as opposed to marijuana, certified marijuana value. But there are some groups that are putting out standards for, controlled batch testing. So again, those are catching up to the industry.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Sandra, I'm going to throw this question your way. Is the DEA working on a procedure to quant THC? And if so, could you provide information on that procedure? We have quite a few people asking about different procedures.
Yes, we have validated and already implemented a procedure using liquid chromatography and UV detection. Not that different from a lot of the publications out there that use high-performance liquid chromatography with UV detection. So yeah, we have implemented that, and that's the procedure that is done when we have inconclusives and the customer requests further analysis. That is the procedure that is being used.
All right, thank you, Sandra. Next question that came in is from Chad, and it's from today, asking, using the standard of THC concentration based on dry weight, is there a standard of moisture content that is applied to the dry weight? Plant material age and storage conditions obviously have effect on the amount of water present in the material. Concentration of THC would be expected to increase as the plant material dries out. Mike, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, as far as the way most of the standard industry is applying it, is we are doing a correction for the moisture content. And so when you get a THC report, that is based on the dry weight. So if you have a plant that's freshly harvested and it's sitting at 65% moisture, we do correct that, and the results are indicative of what the dry result would be. And so, we are taking that into account from the industry side. And so, again, we when our reports are going out, they are corrected for dry weight. Now, I know AOAC and ASTM are coming up with methods for a standardized method. Most are either, they're using drying balances, or they're doing LOD type methods for it. And again, that's one of those, as we progress in this industry, the standardization is quickly coming upon us.
May I add something to that?
Yes.
Yes, and Mike, please correct me if I'm wrong, and I just want to provide some additional information based on the literature out there for the drug analysis laboratories. And as I understand it, there's there's a procedure to measure the moisture, and then there's other procedures for actually drying the materials. And it is my understanding, again, that about 10% moisture it would in fact be considered dry plant material. And a lot of the hemp growers do in fact immediately dry the plant material, as to not for the material, not to lose its integrity. And I think, Mike, what you just mentioned, I think is what's popularly done, correct? The correct for the moisture, because by drying it, you're also going to lose a lot of the terpenes in the material. Is that correct?
Correct. And so what we, again, that's one of the areas that we're looking at, because some of the terpenes, you can lose those in any kind of a drying procedure that you do.
Yeah.
But essentially what we're doing is, we're not drying the actual physical sample. We're doing a moisture correction. So we take a portion of the sample, we dry it. That way we're not decarboxylating the sample in any way. We're not adulterating it. And then we extract the other sample that we take and get the profile based on it. So we're doing a moisture correction. Now,
so you do a drying just on the portion and then apply that at the end as a correction.
Right, we do that as a moisture correction. Now, there are some places, not everybody applies that evenly. And again, this is where some of now that the industry is starting to take off, is we're trying to get some more, standardized techniques. But there are some people that, it looks dry, so it must be dry. Well, again, that's from our standpoint with our labs. We don't want to take that approach. So we want to know what that correction is. The language of the law is based on the dry basis. And so we do find what the moisture content is and make a correction for that.
All right. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Sandra. So Sandra, this question is going to come to you originally. But Mike, we would definitely love to hear from the private sector as well. Sandra, I believe you mentioned in the previous webinar that the DEA is analyzing concentrates and extracts. Are you utilizing the semi-quant process for the analysis? If so, what are you reporting for results which exceed the 1% cutoff? And then there are a lot of questions about reliable methods to extract other things such as vape oils, food, edibles, and other things like that.
All right. So for the liquid and extracts, we do have an SOP that we established for that as well. That was kind of derived from the previous SOP for analysis of plant material. Unfortunately, that second SOP for liquids and extract is not on the latest version that was posted publicly, but will be available in our next posting of the analysis of drug manual of our procedures. But we also have an analytical scheme for that, and we do not do the color test for it because the color test could produce false positives and false negatives that would be matrix just as a result of matrix effects with the differences, different substances, liquids and extracts encounter out there. And we do we do gas chromatography with FID, flame ionization detection is one of the samplings, and then the second sampling it's taken through the procedure for the GCMS method. Now, because a lot of these samples are concentrated, highly concentrated, either on THC or CBD, we do have a dilution step. And we then correct for that dilution by decreasing the decision limit for our THC to internal standard. A peak higher and ratio measurements. So instead of, we do a 1:10 dilution on the sampling prep, so the decision limit is 0.1, and that would tell us if it's indicative of above 1% or below 1%. And I know there was another question related to that regarding if we did a separate validation for that. We did not do a separate full validation for that. We just took the procedure, worked on the math, and then validated it against values that were obtained using NMR quantitation. And that's how we verified the results. In terms of reporting, those results are reported as the delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol.
All right. Thank you, Sandra.
Yep.
And then, Mike, do you have a lot of people were interested in methods related to food products, extracts, oils, vape, liquids, things like that? If you have any comments on that.
Yeah, well, we get a lot of, it's amazing how many different things we have had requested of us. The issues, every time you change the matrix, of course, what does it do to your analytical scheme? And so, for us, fortunately, we were able to ask a lot of questions up front, like get as many of the ingredients and know what's going on. Most oils kind of fall generally in a really good sweet method for us, but you get something that's a little bit different, or results don't add up to where they should be, and of course that requires a little more investigation. And so we'll do a little bit of a method development for each one of those. The food products, again, each one has its own kind of feel that we need for it. One of being the any kind of gummy or anything like that really has a matrix, has a lot to do with it. So you have to be careful when you're doing those. And so having those methods in place ahead of time, especially on a forensic side, are going to be critical. And so getting as much information as you can out of what you're starting with, and then knowing how to proceed analytically. So there's not always it'd be great if there was a one method fits all, but this definitely isn't an area where that's the case.
All right, Mike, Josh had a question for you, actually a two-part. What are you using to measure the moisture content from the previous question? And then is there any literature showing how the cannabinoid content changes as the sample dries? If the hemp testing occurs 15 days prior to harvest, isn't it possible the cannabinoid content would change?
Okay. As far as the moisture goes, we do a loss on drying, so we use a moisture balance for that, or we can do large batches in a drying oven. As far as can the material change? Yes, it most certainly can change within 15 days. And so part of the problem there is harvesting is such a large process, in labs, of course, well, they want to keep their product or their plants in the ground as long as possible to get the CBD as high as they can. And so they're trying to balance all of that. And so that does become an issue, and so, again, there's people that are testing a whole lot more frequently. And so if you look at some of the literature out there, there's definitely a spike in when, you hit that sweet spot in time. Over the course of the 2 weeks, you may see something increase. And so, again, that's some of the things that they look at the risk and reward aspect of it. Hey, I've got this within 15 days. Now, as far as going from a hemp product to a marijuana product in that 2 weeks, that's never going to happen. You may see something go up, in 0.1% or so. You're not going to see a 4-point spike in your THC over those 15 days. And so, again, that's the rates and such are different with every strain and every hybrid strain that they've got going on. So it's really hard until you actually work with a very particular strain to know how that's going to reproduce season to season.
All right, thanks, Mike. So I'm going to throw this one to Renee. And Renee, I apologize. This is obviously a loaded question, but I would love to hear from all of the presenters as well. And I apologize again for not providing you with a crystal ball to see into the future, but what do you feel is the future legislation for controlling marijuana, such as decriminalization, legalization of cannabis products, with more and more movement among the states to reclassify hemp and or to allow medical and recreational marijuana use? Is there any real thought at the federal level to kind of follow suit?
So as an employee of the Congressional Research Service, which is part of the Library of Congress, which has to maintain, a very nonpartisan, unbiased role, there would be no opportunity for me to make any types of predictions of what Congress might do. We only serve by providing information to the U.S. Congress, and so my ability to answer this question, I'm not able to do that at this point, and I really do think that nobody will know the answer to this question. I mean, it just it remains to be seen.
I completely agree. We just needed to hear it from you because we've gotten quite a few questions on that front. Sandra, a question for you. So for clarification, DEA is only reporting out THC on extracts concentrates that have a concentration greater than 1% with no attribution to the sample being from either hemp or marijuana. Is this correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, thank you for that. Let's see. Mike, I'm going to throw this one back at you. What happens to the product if at harvest the THC content is above 3%, and you receive that product? Is it how exactly, from a laboratory standpoint, is that cataloged and then possibly destroyed? Mike, you might be on mute right now.
Sorry about that.
No
Yeah, so basically, once we're complete with all our samples, we hold our retained sample for 30 days in case there's any question. But then everything's marked for destruction, and it is, we pack it up and have it shipped out. And so we track all that. And then as far as notifications, fortunately, we've not had any plant material show up that high. We really haven't hit that 3% level often, maybe in a crude extract or something. But again, it's blended down, and then it's, everything we have is definitely lower within the building is definitely lower than the 0.3%. And then it's also mixed with kitty litter and wood shavings, so it's not really consumable at that point.
All right, thanks, Mike. Sandra, a question for you about the 4AP test. Has use of the 4AP test been through the court system yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Question coming from our audience from today. Does all hemp have more CBD than THC, or are there strains of hemp that have very low CBD in addition to a low THC, such as something that would be used for fibers instead of just the flower?
Yeah, I mean, there are strains out there that are, that one of the new ones is CBG, and they show a very low THC, a total THC of usually typically of below 0.2 percent, and then and they have relatively no CBD in them. Again, the genetics are all over the board as far as what's out there, and then typically when you're growing for fiber, you're looking at different plants there, and they're not typically high in CBD or THC. So it's a different kind of growth.
All right, thanks, Mike. Renee, a question for you going back to total THC. Are other THC isomers being included into the total THC content as per the USDA rule? Are we looking at Delta 8 THC, 9R Delta 6, and other isomers in there as well?
So within USDA's rulemaking, let me get the exact language here, one second. And I think Sandra would be better prepared to answer this question in terms of the other THC isomers. But the way that they describe it in the rulemaking, which may be different than what they're doing in various labs, has more to do with the THC acid and post-decarboxylation, which is another issue that some in the industry have some concerns with, and how the process moves forward. Sandra, are you able to take a better stab at that question? Or Mike? But I could, so I could find, let's see, one second. Let me find
it is our understanding that is the Delta 9 THC in the conversion of the THCA to it. So not including the other positional isomers.
So the exact language is samples must be tested using post-decarboxylation or other similarly reliable analytical methods. As an aside, the industry wants more information on other reliable analytical methods. That's part of the docket comments that are on USDA's rule. And then the USDA's rule continues where the total THC concentration level reported accounts for the conversion of Delta 9 THC acid, THCA into THC. And that's how they, and throughout the rule, they repeatedly say, use the terminology total THC and with less reliant on the Delta 9, which is the Delta 9 THC is what is specifically referred to in statute.
Yeah, that's, again, on the industry side, when they define the THC as Delta 9, again, that's a hot button item on the other side of industry, but we can debate whether it's, the difference between red tomatoes and green tomatoes or what have you. Chemically, they have different numbers. And so the non-decarboxylated assays would be the HPLC type assays. And so I think there's definitely enough evidence out there to show that you can run a decarboxylated method, a GC method, and get the same result by HPLC looking at the THCA versus the Delta 9 and converting the THC to Delta 9 and giving a total THC. And I think that's definitely, I know there's plenty of information out there showing that, when you get that complete conversion, there's, as far as a reliable method, the HPLC method is just as reliable, if not more informative than the GC method in that category. And so, again, that's all. There's a lot of discussions to be had about the legality and the legislative part of it to clarify all that. So, again, playing devil's advocate from the industry side, they define it as Delta 9, and then they later, or for THC as Delta 9, and then they later, okay, all the decarboxylated material is, and then Delta 9. And so, yeah, the industry is preparing to do basically the total THC at 0.3. And so from an industry-wide perspective, that's, they're going to work within the rules that are established. And so I don't think anyone's wanting to pay that legal bill to fight that all the way, that, to differentiate between decarboxylated Delta 9 and Delta 9 and total THC. So you'll see them all for next year's grow be in that 0.3% compliant.
All right, thanks, Mike. So, Sandra, this question is going to be more, I think, in your lane based on sampling. How do you know that you have a representative sample? Do you have to take multiple samples and see if the values agree within a certain limit? Such as an example, if a truck of 1,000 pounds of hemp is pulled over, how would you sample test that?
Well, we personally wouldn't do that. Our law enforcement agents in the field would do that, and they have been, at least from the Drug Enforcement Administration agents, they have been provided with sampling guidelines or procedures how to sample such a population, and then they come and bring it to the lab, and we test each one of those units. And we follow similar sampling procedures as we do for other drugs, where we do either test all the units if it's less than 10 packages. If it's 10 or more, we do statistical sampling. But then the analytical scheme for cannabis plant material, it is applied to each one of the selected units.
All right, thank you, Sandra. Mike, this question's coming back to you. Where do you ship your blend for disposal?
There's several commercial companies doing that, and so they're kind of specialized in that industry. And so again, it's if you look, a lot of waste disposal companies are picking up that type of material, and so some are blending it for incineration, some are removing it other ways. And so without putting a plug out there, there are things, if you do a Google search, you can find companies willing to do that.
All right, thanks, Mike. Sandra, so just a follow-up, do you know anything about what your agents have been told regarding sampling?
Okay, so they have been given sampling procedures, and those procedures have been incorporated into the agent's manual, at least for the Drug Enforcement Administration agents, special agents. And it's similar to what just indicated. If they have a large population, they in fact have been given instructions to do sampling based on the hypergeometric distribution, statistical sampling. So we provided them the manual. We provided their division with a table for incorporation into the agent's manual.
All right. Thank you, Sandra. Mike, question coming back from you. You had mentioned in the first webinar about how important it is to get a good representative sample for testing the plant material. What technique do you feel is best to provide the best sample for you in the laboratory?
Well, in the laboratory, again, it varies. There's not a one magic method for everything, but most times we use liquid nitrogen, and then we'll shred the sample after it's been frozen. And then, you try and get your particle size as small as you can without aggressive, like mortar and pestle. Sometimes you can actually throw off your accuracy because you're mashing trichomes and, you have things stick to everything. And so it's really depends on the kind of plant material you're starting with. On the oils and such, again, that's a little bit different technique where you may warm the sample to make sure you get it blended really well. And you warm it up, blend it, and then that way you get anything that's crystallized out of it that if you're sampling just the top, you may miss. And so, again, everything's kind of done on its own. Gummies and food products, again, that's more of a method development type thing where you have to see how well was the product, how homogenized is the product, and then you pick your extraction technique from there. And a lot of times we wind up using a lot larger sample size to help, normalize distribution. And so, again, all of those are things we, at least on the contract testing lab side, we have the ability to control all those features. So, we can work with all of those things to make sure we get a good representative sample. And, we have the fortune of being able to have replicate samples and be able to develop those methods a little bit more each iteration. And so, you see a new product come in. Of course, we do a lot more method development, a lot more replicates to make sure that the number we're getting is accurate and precise. And then as we see that method, that batch come in again, then we're comfortable with the method, and then we do fewer replicates, and then we may play with sample size.
All right, thanks, Mike. So, Sandra, a question for you about your quantitative method. So, for the marijuana hemp analytical scheme, why was 1% THC chosen as the quantified amount threshold and not 0.3%? And why did the DEA choose to go with this quant plan rather than using something like LC-UV-MS? And what were the percentage of inconclusive results with the quant plan that you're currently using?
Okay, so there's a lot of questions in there. I'll start by saying, at the end of the day, we're using both. The analytical scheme that's used through the regional laboratories, it is the micro-macro followed by the color test, the 4AP typification color test, followed by the 1% assessment on the THC level, and we do that by comparing the THC to internal standard ratio in a sample based on the validation studies that we did with hemp materials that had purities on that region. That 1% was chosen. We kind of wanted to go with a common sense approach and given the variability that we were expecting, given the fact that we were going to be using peak heights and ratios on a GCMS technique, because we also wanted to accomplish the identification at the same time and get the mass spectral data. Because we knew the variability, we wanted to play safe and account for that. So obviously, if it's above that 1%, it's obviously above the 0.3 level. So that was kind of our common sense approach to it. After that implementation, we have also done ruggedness studies, and we just recently finished also an interlaboratory study where we were able to assess that variability and in fact confirm in the fitness for purpose of that threshold at 1%. So we can in fact be highly confident that if a hemp sample, a truly hemp sample, comes into the laboratory, the variability that we see from instrument to instrument in terms of the THC to internal standard ratios, that variability is significant. It's about 30%, but even if it was to vary and we establish a 95% confidence level on that, it would still be below our decision limit. So So that makes us feel highly confident that if a hemp sample was to come into the laboratory, it is very, very unlikely that a THC to internal standard ratio above 1 would in fact be measured. Now, if the results of that analytical scheme in the regional laboratories is inconclusive, that's where it goes to further analysis. And when the customer requests that further analysis, then we do the full quantitation using HPLC UV in a method that we validated and implemented in about 2.5 months ago. Up to date, the latest numbers that that we obtained were back in January. I think we were slightly over 1,100 exhibits of cannabis that had been submitted to the laboratory since the implementation of the analytical scheme. And these were submissions that were ceased after December 20th, 2018. So about, of those 1,100, about 61 were reported as inconclusive. And so we're right around the 95, 96% that we wanted to tackle of exhibits that are received in the lab being reported as marijuana. And so of those 60 plus that were reported as inconclusive, further analysis, I believe, has only been requested for 5 to 6 of them. So the quantitative method has been done in about 6 of them. I believe there were 2 of them. One of them, I think, was a powder exhibit, so it wasn't sure if it was in fact coming from plant material. 2 of them actually had really significantly high concentrations of THC, around 10%. It just happens to be that they had more CBD than THC, so that's why the color test was inconclusive. And 2 of the exhibits resulted in purities of 0.33% and 0.37%. So that's those are as far as what we have received on those.
All right, thank you, Sandra. We're going to take a quick pause. Just believe it or not, we are actually finished with our first hour of today's event. Things are moving right along. Just a couple of quick announcements. We are recording today's webinar, and we will be converting it into our archival version over the next couple of days. That way, anyone that would like a refresh, or if any colleagues might have missed today's live Q&A, they will be able to refer back and obtain all of the answers and dialogue that we have today. Also, if you are watching the direct link live feed today and you do need our or you do need your certificate of completion, please make sure to send an email to our email address. That way we can manually provide you with your certificate of completion. So the next question came in from Josh Green, and this will be posed to the entire group. North Carolina law and perhaps other states make a distinction between the extracted resin of marijuana and the synthetic THC or THC isolated from the resin of marijuana. Can anyone comment on distinction between them and how we would be able to tell what a particular item is? This distinction was made before the hemp issue, but may be important now with edibles.
Well, again, in a natural product, if you're seeing CBD, you're going to see some of the other cannabinoids. If you're seeing just delta-9 THC, then that would give me the best suggestion that that's an adulterated or a product that's been made with just an isolate. And then also the concentrations. You see some of these things that get in the, above 45%, and then that's not coming from a natural plant material. That's coming from an isolated or a concentrated material. And so that's, kind of how you would put all that together.
All right, thanks, Mike. So Sandra, Dan's asking, now that the 4AP test has had time in the field, how well is the 4AP test correlating with your analytical testing? He would definitely like to get more feedback on how the tool is working for your team in the field versus what is actually panned out when it's tested in the laboratory.
Let's see, I guess by the feel, I'm assuming Mr. Grubb is referring to the agents in the field doing the test. And honestly, I do not have that type of information. All we get is the submission with the paperwork, and a lot of the times this information is not being provided. So I could not establish a correlation between the results in the field in our analytical testing, and especially if the results in the field are being negative and we are not even receiving that evidence.
Okay. Sandra, another question for you. Do you expect any possible issues in court with the first report saying inconclusive and then a second report saying, yes, this was in fact THC and marijuana?
Oh, no, I wouldn't. I mean, there are two very different decision points and that are being looked at. First, in our general analytical scheme, and then in the second one. Especially since the second one is going to be looking at a much lower level. It is fit for that purpose of looking below the 1% and even below the 0.3%. And given the fact that it's also a full quantitative techniques. And a lot more, and just to supplement what I has described earlier, our sample preparation procedures are very different for the analytical scheme and the GCMS methods that's done in the labs. We don't ask the analyst to dry or to grind anything, and the extraction is only 10 minutes and vortex it and then filter and test it in the GCMS method. The sample preparation for our quantitative procedure is a little bit more exhaustive. We do grind the material and using a mill, and we reduce the particle size to about 425 micrometers. I'm sorry, sounds like I'm not hearing me very well. We reduce the particle size and we pass the ground material through a 40 mesh. And we, in fact, for any unit that we test, we remove two portions and we do full extraction on a mixture of 80-20 acetonitrile methanol. And we do sonicate for 15 minutes and then centrifuge. And then we do a dilution depending on what the expected level is. We also have two working ranges in the instrument that we need to address. The working range for THCA is slightly different than the working range for THC, given that those two substances are gonna may be found at very different concentrations in the material. So we do try to take that into account as well. And then the results of those two portions actually need to be within 2% relative difference. And we established that by doing a heterogeneity study during our method development. As probably Mike can confirm, this is very, very heterogeneous material, even after you have exhaustively, grounded and processed it. It is just the nature of the natural products. So it is a very different sample preparation with a different goal. So I would not expect issues in court regarding those two conclusions, and the chemist can very well explain it.
All right, thank you, Sandra. So, Mike, this was something that we had discussed after the last webinar, and you had also mentioned that this was something that we could probably build an entire event on. But I wanted to open up the floor to you to speak for a little bit on licensed and planted and harvested, as we had discussed before.
All right, the licensed, planted, and harvested. Again, a lot of people jumped in, and you'll see it again this year, I believe. The numbers that went out there and the numbers everybody heard, we have 3,900 people licensed in the state of Tennessee, and the licenses went through the roof. Well, a lot of people planned, hey, I want to have the option. So they went ahead and got their license. So if everything fell together, they started doing their research. And then you look at the planted. A high percentage of those people got through there and got planted. And some people had really big eyes and said, hey, they heard people selling seeds, and hey, I can make $55,000 an acre. Let me plant 10 or 15 acres. And then the reality hit them. And so the acres harvested between not growing well, pestilence, microbial contamination, fungus contamination, a lot of material was lost. And so those numbers haven't all been harvested yet. And then from there, it's even the people that made it to harvest that didn't quite have a product good enough to sell. And so there's a lot of people that lost, that had great intentions of doing huge farming. They got maybe a 10-acre license. They may have planted 5 acres, and then of that, they may have harvested only 2.5 acres that were actually deemed sellable material. And so, again, those numbers are hard to get a real feel for how much hemp product actually made it to market this year. And so I think a lot of what people have to look at the retail sales and see how much of this material is actually selling at market compared to a year ago today. And so I know that may be for a whole other audience, but from what's being sold in the market, that's what's creating a lot of this problem. Is you have a lot of people buying smokable hemp and driving around with it in their car, and so officers don't know, is it hemp, is it marijuana? It creates a lot of confusion. And so again, that's some of the things. Now, as far as labeling of hemp products, they're supposed to be all clearly labeled that they're hemp. But again, once you buy material and then what people do with it afterwards is always problematic at best. And so, again, the numbers that we're seeing, are all over the place. And then the reporting, a lot of people try and do a great job of reporting, but a lot of people, we planted 4 acres and we had spacing of 15 feet per plant. That's a lot different than most people that are growing at 6 or 8 feet a plant. And so, again, those are all, until the final reports come in, the numbers are kind of all over the board. Did that answer your question, Josh?
Yes, sir. That was perfect.
Okay. All righty.
Although this is Renee, I would add to that the market data on hemp products is very unreliable. There are a lot of different organizations that are collecting information, and they don't have precise information, and a lot of the numbers seem to be very overestimated. And there is also, in terms of trying to surmise what's going on the U.S. production side by looking at consumer products, that's a little tricky also, because we do import a lot of hemp products for ingredients, especially from Canada. And so, and if you look at the trade data on the import side, those imports continue to increase pretty quickly. And there has been complaint by some of the industry that regular cold pressed oil that would typically be used in a salad dressing or in a body product is being sold as a CBD type product, which a CBD type product is usually extracted using very different types of methods. And so looking at the market information, as Mike noted, the data is all over the place, but the data is also not very reliable, is all I would say at this point.
I would agree, yes. And, again, it's a reporting. Who gets the reports? How do they get reported? There is still that fringe society of, hey, we don't want anyone to come check and see what we're doing. And so there's all those kind of things going on as well. And so as the industry gets its footing and gets stabilized, I think a lot of that reporting factor will also come with it. So.
All right. Thank you, Renee and Mike. So, Sandra, I think this one's going to come more towards your way with everything that we have going on right now in our world and with limited contact or no contact. Are there any kind of current non-contact or limited contact detection for marijuana? If not, are there any other field methods available or under study apart from the 4AP test?
So again, I'm assuming this is as pertaining to how field agents would use it. And there are a couple of colorimetric products available. I do believe all of them are based, in fact, on the 4-aminophenol test. Some companies might have, revised it slightly. We have tested some of those, and we pretty much found no difference on the performance of the test. I mean, still inconclusive results when THC and CBD are at similar levels. There are, again, and I'm sure a lot of the people in the audience, as well as Mike and Renee, there are potential or instruments out there, either based on Raman detection or infrared detection, that also claim to be used. I think a lot of them are routinely used on the hemp industry. So maybe Mike could provide a little bit more information to see what is it that the growers and the farmers are using for that.
Well, most of the farmers right now, the IR, the near IR, and the Raman stuff, it's gaining a little traction, but the cost of getting set up in it is still pretty pricey compared to sending your sample off. Now, the idea of having a sample that, they can run a lot more samples once they get that instrument is really attractive to them. But the Raman and the IR type applications are gaining some, and it would definitely get you, within the ballpark of where you're at. Of course, everything has its advantages, disadvantages. Disadvantages with the spectral methods are, the laser path size and the heterogeneous nature of the samples makes it really difficult to get an accurate read. And so those are some of the pitfalls of those procedures, but they are coming on and becoming more and more available.
All right. Thank you, Mike and Sandra. So Sandra, another question has come in from an audience member for today. Are you seeing any difference in the color results on the 4AP test for Delta 8 versus Delta 9 THC?
All right, yeah, so we did some of that testing when we were doing the validation of the color test for using in casework. And yes, in fact, Delta 8 does produce a blue result as well. Similar for cannabinol as well as cannabicyclol. Similar to THCV, all those produce blue results. and just telling us that the complex that is formed, a color producing complex, it's similar for all those compounds, given that they share a similar core structure. Now, delta 8, though it's naturally occurring, it is found at very, very low levels in the plant materials. And that is actually why the typification color test, the 4AP color test, should be done in very small amount of material. So to ensure that that blue color is in fact coming from only the delta 9 THC or the delta 9 THCA, since that would be the major component on plant material. And it's not a product of the interference of some of those other cannabinoids that could also produce a blue result. And again, a lot of those other cannabinoids that could produce a blue result are very, very low occurring in low levels in the natural product.
All right, thanks, Sandra. So, Mike, a question coming back to you. Really, this is going to go into your expertise on the buildup of hemp and marijuana. Isn't it possible to have legal hemp at the time of testing and then illegal hemp once it's encountered on the streets, such as for states that are not explicit in using total THC? What happens when THCA, the acid, then degrades back to THC post-certification? Is there a possibility of it being above the legal limit if seized by an individual or law enforcement later on down the road?
Yes, it is. I mean, there's always the possibility of that. The issue is the amount present. Again, when you're looking at the difference between marijuana and hemp, with hemp being defined at 0.3, marijuana now, again, those levels of, especially since legalization in parts of the country, have really skyrocketed. And so the people that would be seeking out marijuana would be very disappointed with the hemp strain that may have a point, say a 0.6 even percent total THC, because they're not going to get that same effect that they would be looking for. And so again, there's a lot of people in the industry side wanting to see what set a differential between CBD to THC. And the higher that differential, you're not going to get that high from it. But again, that's for other people to sort out than us. But yeah, the under the legal definition, yes, it's possible. Would somebody take a legal hemp product and by heating it or letting it age a little bit, be able to make something that's somebody's going to be able to pass for marijuana? That's not going to be quite the case.
All right, thank you, Mike. So, Sandra, coming back to you, how feasible would the new marijuana testing at DEA be for state and local laboratories? Validation needed or just verification, relying on DEA's validation studies? Can you speak on that?
Yes, I could speak a little bit, so first, let me clarify that in the policy that we have, our analysis of drugs manual, which is posted publicly, does have the SOP, the standard operating procedure that we use for this analysis. And not only that, in another section of that manual, there's also the listing of the procedures that we use for the validation. It is found on the chapter 1 of our manual. So, and I'm only saying that because our procedures are posted, but not our validation study. Now, having said that, we have been in communication with over 50 state and local jurisdictions throughout the United States, where they have, in fact, been using and implementing, verifying this method, validating it, or verifying, depending on the language that they prefer to use, in their laboratories. and obtaining cannabis plant materials that are, purported to contain low THC versus high THC materials, and at least being able to verify and document that the GCMS method as well as the color test are fit for purpose and produce the same result as we see in our validation. So the answer to the question, I guess, is yes, it's feasible, and I'm aware of many laboratories that have implemented it already within their work and conducted their own validation studies.
Thank you, Sandra. Sandra, again, I'm going to throw this question at you originally, but then Mike, we would love to hear from the private sector on just how this is affecting you as well. So what is the DEA requiring for laboratories to be able to test hemp and marijuana products in-house under the new USDA interim rule? And then Mike, will throw it to you, how is that affecting you on your side in the private sector? So Sandra, we'll give that to you first.
Is this pertaining to total THC versus THC?
Yes. So we will kind of focus more on the USDA interim rule. So we'll go with total THC for this question.
Yes. So let me start with the analytical scheme and the GCMS method, because a significant portion of that THCA that is existing in the sample to start with, since we're talking about plant material, a significant portion of it, not all of it, will be decarboxylated. There are studies demonstrating that this decarboxylation is only, depending on conditions, only 60 to 80% efficient. So we know we're losing a good part of it, but then the rest of it is being observed as THC. In any case, we are seeing a lower bound for that total THC. For the GCMS method on the analytical scheme. Now, if we go into the HPLC method, the quantitative method, we are measuring both of them individually, and we are reporting the total THC. So we apply the molecular weight correction to THCA, and then we add that to the percentage of THC and then report it as total.
Yeah. And basically, we're doing the same thing. I mean, we haven't changed our methodology. We are still doing the HPLC techniques for profiling and potency, but then we are calculating the total THCs. And so that's kind of where we've stayed there. Again, as far as how the regulation's affecting us, there's a lot of paperwork and things like that in charge, getting all our accreditations in place and such and keeping those. That's more of a logistical problem than an actual analytical problem.
Mike, we do have some laboratory professionals and directors from the private sector that are on this lab. Would you be able to speak a little bit more about some of the processes that you've gone through in order to be a DEA accredited laboratory under the USDA ruling?
Well, the USDA rules changed slightly. It's my understanding that may not become a requirement. But again, it's registering on a state level and then, registering on a national level. And so we've started that process. But then the ISO requirement, again, that's, building your quality manual core and all that stuff within the ISO 17025. Again, that's that could be a whole long discussion. I may not be the most relevant expert on, but it's a long process of getting all your procedures documented, getting all your quality manual documented, having all your change control, all your training documented. And so, I think with those requirements that is producing, a more of a regulatory burden on the laboratories, but at the end of the day, the laboratories that are following those and can meet those inspection guidelines and such, they're stepping up and doing. You'll see a lot less of the Wild West laboratory type procedures. It's making everybody validate their methods and demonstrating their validations. And so I think overall, I think that's, and again, people in the industry may get upset at me, but I think it will make the laboratory scene a better scene in the hemp and marijuana space.
Josh, I just want to clarify some of the language. I think that you posed in the question, just because I don't want anybody to be confused. And what the USDA came out is about DEA registration, not accreditation. The laboratories get accredited by an accrediting body. The DEA registration is needed so laboratories are authorized to handle controlled substances.
All right, thank you for your answers, and definitely thank you for your clarification there, Sandra. So, Sandra, we've had a couple of people ask this question of you. Is it possible for the DEA validation documents for quantifying or quantitating THC to be released to certain laboratories, specifically for the GC-MS ratio quant method?
So this is a point for me not to decide. We would have to. It's not my decision to make in terms of the sharing of the actual validation data or the validation report. But and I don't want to get inundated. If I say yes, I'm going to get bombarded with a lot of emails about it. But I will be happy, at least for the laboratories that we have collaborated with. A lot of the times, all they needed to see was how we validated, and that's posted on our manual. Now, if there's additional questions after they go through that, I would definitely be happy to answer and assist those laboratories and collaborate with them. One of the most typical routine questions that we get is, how do I validate it if they don't have materials? And that was an issue that we encountered as well, and it was something that we definitely would not have been able to be done. Except for the fact that we had a memorandum of understanding, and we were able to obtain samples from a hemp testing laboratory, samples that have been previously characterized by their validated procedures. So since a lot of the method specifically for the analytical scheme, it's about testing a low and below and above that decision limit. I have suggested to some laboratories to obtain some hemp reference materials that are available online, and at least make sure that a sample like that, is not detected above the decision limit, and then obtain a sample that has been previously characterized as containing high THC levels, and then also test it. And if that testing obviously can be done under repeatability and reproducibility conditions, that's even better. But that's the big hurdle right now. And again, our procedures are listed in terms of the HPLC method. There's actually a lot of work in the literature that has already been published by many other people before us. Regarding quantitative methods for HPLC quantitation of cannabinoids.
All right, thank you, Sandra. So let's see. The next question we have, again, a few different kind of angles this is coming at. But have Sandra, you or Mike seen any THCA that's converting into CBNA instead of THC, as well as CBD converting to THC through GC-MS analysis? I know that RTI actually did a study, CBD to THC conversion in toxicology samples where an acid-derived agent was used. Have either one of you seen anything conversions going ways that you're not typically expecting?
So the conversion for THCA to CBNA happens naturally with storage and age on the plant material. In the drug analysis laboratories, we're typically seeing just the CBN because under typical GCMS conditions, we don't see the carboxylated compounds. We don't see the acidic compounds, just the neutrals. But THCA conversion to CBNA is a naturally occurring process with age and storage. I myself, we have not done derivatization studies to see the acidic and then see conversion on the inlet, if that's what's being asked. And then maybe Mike, maybe you can speak more about this conversion in the plant material fresh, since you also been doing the LC.
Yeah, as far as a natural occurrence, the rate of that exchange is very slow.
Yeah.
And so you could get an idea how long the product's been sitting around. In industry, they prefer not to have their product sitting around that kind of time frame. And so there are some ways to synthetically do it, but again, that's a whole other realm when you're looking at that. And so as far as how that happens and what happens when you're getting that, there are some people that are seeing CBN as the next new cool cannabinoid and looking to speed that process up. And so, there's some people that are looking, hey, can we do remediation and oxidize our THCA to CBNA and then decarboxylate that to make CBN? And so they're looking at those pathways. But as far as from an analytical perspective, unless your lab is really backed up, you're not going to see that in a significant role as far as your values go.
All right, thank you, Sandra. Mike, Sandra, this question's coming back to you. How did the DEA deal with marijuana cases during the validation period, after the 2018 Farm Bill, but before your new analytical scheme was implemented in June of 2019?
Oh, that's a very easy answer to that. Yeah, we temporarily suspended analysis of cannabis submissions since the analytical scheme that we had in place did not answer the legal question after the Farm Bill. We needed to revise our analytical scheme. The only submissions that were analyzed during that period were submissions that had been cases that had been seized prior to December 20th, 2018. We suspended analysis until the new analytical scheme was implemented.
All right, Mike, this one's coming back to you. Since you are in the private sector, you have to be forward-facing with your customers. Can you explain more, and I know you did touch on this earlier, but can you explain more on how your laboratory is currently validating your testing methods to demonstrate confidence in your measurements to your customers? Plus, how do you currently determine the uncertainty associated with your measurements?
Okay. Again, without giving too much away, we do look at all the different matrices we get. And so a lot of times, in plant material, we got a large batch of material. We homogenized it. We went to great lengths to, reduce its particle size. We weren't worried about the exact concentration, but we ran it through pretty much we used the guidelines from the USP as far as the validation goes. And so, and then we looked at, we looked at the reproducibility and the precision and the accuracy. We looked at the precision or the reproducibility based on the actual sample itself. And then the precision and accuracy, we did spiking on top of that. And so, we went through the process of working on that from a pharmaceutical type background. And so we do the same thing when we get into different products, and again, we've run a whole lot of different products. And so we do the method development aspect of it. And then, we'll run the validation on it to show that, okay, yes, if we extract this 15 times, this is our precision. and all of that stuff is taken into consideration. As far as determining the uncertainty, we use the generalized extreme studentized deviant test, the guess test. And so, again, by preparing a lot of material that we can do, we basically run a control with every set. And so we know what it's based on the uncertainties and based on our method uncertainties and our standard control limits. We evaluate that standard that we created our own standard. And so we developed the method and then developed the control chart for it. And so we run that with every batch that we run of plant material. And so we've done that with plant material, with oil material. And so we have the system under control. We do that by bracketing everything with standards. And so we have our calibration. We have everything bracketed. And now we're extracting a control material that is as similar as possible to the materials that we're extracting. And so we put all that into our quality system. And again, that's a lot of places are doing a lot of different quality type systems. And so that's how we built our quality system. And so we're constantly looking at those numbers.
I could add some to that.
Yes.
For those that are interested on our quantitative method, we had a similar approach. We have our uncertainty budget, and that has three main components. The first component is the uncertainty associated with the accuracy, and similar to Mike, we also based that from the recovery studies that were done during the accuracy testing in the validation. Then the second component is the reproducibility component of uncertainty, and that is dominated by the heterogeneity assessment that we did in the material. And that was an extensive study of like 70 quantitations on 5 different cannabinoids, 7 different samples. And then the third component is the uncertainty associated with the reference material, the CRMs that we're using to prepare the calibration curve. So that covers, and so we have a relative uncertainty that is applied to the final purity value that's obtained by averaging the 2 portions that are quantified. And that's the uncertainty that we report with the quantitation result for the total THC.
All right, Sandra, sticking with you just for a moment. What is the uncertainty allowed in the testing of the 0.3% in hemp?
The uncertainty allowed?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the uncertainty is going to depend on the method. So there's the method, the technique that you use, in the different properties that were assessed during validation. So there's not a value set. Different laboratories and different methods may end up with different uncertainties, and as long as they demonstrate that assessment of uncertainty has happened in a reliable and reproducible way and can be documented, then that's the value. I mean, different techniques would result in different uncertainties, and that's true not only for total THC. It's true for any material, substance that's quantitated.
All right. Next question. In light of the fact that there are a lot of small forensic laboratories with limited resources, does the DEA have any ability to provide training opportunities for the training and validation of cannabis quantitative testing? Most labs like ours have performed only qualitative testing on marijuana along with other drugs involving microexam. If there was an ability to learn and essentially copy the DEA validation plan, this could be a great value to small labs. Do you have any insight into that?
Well, I agree with that. And as I said before, we have collaborated with over 50 jurisdictions, and also recently at the American Academy of Forensic Sciences meeting, we also had a workshop on that when we presented our work, and also on a separate presentation on the same meeting. So we are willing to share our procedures and what we did with the laboratories, especially for those laboratories that may not have the resources to do an entire validation study.
All right. Thank you, Sandra. Renee, I wanted to pose this question to you just to maybe get some insight, or at least point us in the right direction. In terms of addressing the question of the identification of marijuana and hemp, has the forensic or legal community considered a botanical approach? And then the question, when the USDA and when the Farm Bill was introduced, how exactly were the regulations that were imposed in those agreed upon? As this question comes from, was it more of a botanical approach or more of a laboratory side approach?
So when Congress makes laws, they usually, they usually direct an agency to take certain action, but they do give a lot of discretion to the agency in terms of how to actually implement certain requirements, and to, and in many cases, that agency will also, interpret laws sometimes differently than maybe Congress had intended it, based on their own legal read of a particular statute. With the efforts in Congress to bring back hemp as an agricultural commodity that would be supported by USDA as any other agricultural crop, there really wasn't, there may not have been enough understanding about all of the logistics involved in terms of how to test this particular product. It's a very unique situation where you have, a certain threshold based on delta-9 THC that is the arbiter of whether or not something is legal or an illegal commodity. I mean, I can't think of any other agricultural commodity where this is the case. And with USDA, as I mentioned before, being told by Congress to work with the DEA and other federal agencies to develop their regulations, they are going to take there's a lot of technologies that come to bear in that process that may not have been thoroughly thought through by Congress. Congress certainly would not. Congress doesn't tend to be very prescriptive in some of the statute, in some of the laws that they write. And so, again, giving a lot of discretion to the federal agencies who have expertise in this area, there was not necessarily this distinction between a botanical or a lab testing or any other type of approach. They did include language that would specify, other alternative methods, such as, for example, as I mentioned before, the language in the statute regarding post-decarboxylation, and but they didn't specify, for example, that testing would be done on the top part of the plant. But they did, and they didn't necessarily say that testing would be necessary, but obviously testing is necessary when you have an illegal crop, and a legal crop distinguished only by a threshold that is set in statute that other federal agencies need to implement. When USDA first started looking into their regulation, into developing their regulatory framework, rather, they did identify various technical R&D type programs within USDA, and DEA, as I understand it, did the same. There were a number of RFPs put out to try to address this question about how to distinguish hemp from marijuana, both in the field and both roadside tests. And both agencies have been trying to get the technologies in place to make that type of distinction. But Congress itself did not specify how something would be done And it really was up to the agencies to move forward with this method. And I can't think of another approach that would have been done other than going the testing route. But that's my perspective on that question.
All right. Thank you so much, Renee. So before we move into the last 15 minutes of today's webinar, I just want to make everyone aware, again, we are recording today's event. We will be converting it into our archival version over the next couple of days. And that way you will have access to today's material as well as to pass along to any colleagues that might have missed today. Again, we do have 15 minutes remaining, so please make sure if you do have any questions for our subject matter experts that you get those in quickly. That way we can give them enough time to provide responses back to you. Sandra, so the next question is heading your way. How is the DEA reporting findings for extracts or concentrates? Are you saying that it is from marijuana or hemp, or are you just simply stating that it was high in THC concentration versus high in CBD concentration?
No, we're just identifying delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol for those, and that's how our report goes out.
Okay, and Mike or Sandra, this could come to either one of you. Are there any quote-unquote limits of analysis reported with a positive marijuana sample?
Limits of analysis?
We report our LOQ on the report, and typically, we're 10 times below the as far as a limit of quantitation, we're 10 times below the legal limit in the hemp industry, and so most labs do provide their LOQ on their reporting.
For the quantitation report, during the validation, the limit of quantitation was determined, but that is not information that we provide on a laboratory report, neither for marijuana, THC, nor for any other controlled substances that we quantitate. We just provide the purity result along with the uncertainty. Now, in terms of the limit for the analytical scheme method, the GCMS method, the limit would be that decision limit of 1% that we established. So if the laboratory report indicates the presence of marijuana, that means that not only that limit, the testing of that portion was above that decision limit, but also the two other tests, the color test and the microscopic test, were also positive.
All right, Sandra, next question. For those samples that were determined inconclusive and additional testing could be requested, what type of testing would then be done in that additional testing? Would true quantitative testing be done, and what instrumentation or methodologies would be used to make any further determinations?
Yeah, so I think that probably has been answered already. That would be the full quantitation HPLC method with UV detection.
All right, perfect. That is all of the questions that we have currently. We can wait on some other questions to come in for the audience. We do have about 10 minutes left. One that came in, it might need some clarification. I can pose it anyway. Are you finding any different types of hemp that can be identified to the source production? And if we need some more clarification on that, we can get that.
I'm not sure if the question is for Mike.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to best answer it. Are you finding different types of hemp can be identified from their source of production? In the concentrates, you can kind of tell based on what solvents may be present. And so there's some additional tests you could do, but really from standard testing method, I'm not sure if that's a way to say, oh, this tracked to this field. I don't think we have that capability any way, shape, or form yet. But, looking at concentrates, you may be able to say, hey, they did ethanol extraction. They were doing some kind of hydrocarbon extraction. And so those are some things we could do. But, again, it wouldn't fall under standard practice.
Okay. Sandra, Sylvana is asking if you know or if there's any information out there about how technology is supporting activities associated with law enforcement, transportation, other professionals as far as field testing goes, and being able to test in real time some of the hemp that is out there and other resources that we can point them towards.
I do not have direct knowledge of what different law enforcement jurisdictions are doing in the field. I do know, or what the results of those interactions have been. I'm trying to read her questions here for identification of production for proper for compliance. If the question is being asked for the compliance point of view, I think that would be a compliance question from the point of view of classifying something as hemp. Is that correct? And then on that case, Mike, are you aware of routinely materials being tested for the hemp industry that are using these technologies?
I mean, routinely, again, most people are going with HPLC. Looking at the string of questions there, from a compliance aspect, that's how they're testing. But if you were looking for something that can test other chemicals present quickly, things like that, your Raman and your near and FTIRs would be potentially, and I know they're working on those kind of applications to be able to do broad scan of things. So, again, it's technology that's coming. Whether or not it'll be supported at the DEA level, or I think it would definitely be defendable in court. But again, as far as standard methodologies, I think we're backlogged on a lot of things. Getting the actual identification, is it hemp or is it marijuana? Getting that question answered first, then looking at the safety aspect of the residual solvents, the heavy metals, the pesticides, getting all those methods standardized. But then, yes, I think faster. They're always looking for faster ways to find the analysis to be able to do something quickly.
Yeah, and I just wanna add to that yes, I mean there are definitely technologies out there. Again, some of them based on color tests, some of them based on spectroscopy techniques, portable instruments. And I just want to make sure that the general understanding is that these are for presumptive analysis in the field. A lot of these technologies will have to be followed by a full quantitation done in an accredited laboratory. A lot of those portable techniques do not generate reviewable data, for example. So that would be a problem in terms of presentation of particular evidence in court. A lot of those technologies, the way they are being, assessed, investigated, and a lot of them are under development. A lot of those technologies also depend on the availability of materials that have been highly characterized. So they can train those instruments and those technologies to distinguish when they're looking at a sample of hemp versus a sample of marijuana above the 0.3 level. So it's a highly complicated area where like all factors are affecting multiple areas of it. So, in the unavailability of reference materials is something that not only affects laboratories that are trying to validate the qualitative or quantitative methods, but it's also something that affects how those portable instruments are performing in the in their evaluation, in the field.
All right, thank you, Sandra. We have just a couple of minutes left. A question came in, and really this one's going to be posed to the whole group to kind of finish things out. Does anyone know if the methods that forensic laboratories are using are substantially different from USDA or State Department of Agriculture methods or proposed methods? And if so, why are we not using similar methods given that we are technically testing to the same requirements?
I believe we are all using very similar methods. And I think, even when Mike described his assessment of uncertainty and his validation parameters were very similar to the ones that we use. And I know from conversations that we've had, for example, with the folks in Colorado, which has a long-standing history of marijuana and hemp analysis, they have worked in great collaborations with the hemp private laboratories in Colorado, together with the state laboratories from the law enforcement side, and a lot of them are using exactly the same methodologies, and in fact sometimes comparing samples from one lab to the other. So in reality, I think for the most part, we are all using very, very similar techniques. There may be slight differences on the particulars of a method. Maybe not everybody is using exactly the same, percentage of water or acetonitrile on the HPLC method. But in general and for the most part, I believe we are all in a similar field. I don't know how Mike feels about that. So
I would agree. I mean, I think the analytical approaches, there's only so many different ways to skin a cat, and
yeah.
We all try to get the best method, the best technique to get the most accurate representation of what we have. And so, of course, from the industry side, we want to make sure everybody's within compliance. We want to make sure, they're producing safe products, all that good stuff. And so, we really, there's different ways to do it. Like, a lot of people jumped on the GC version, whereas industry may have pushed us to the LC version to give them a little bit broader profile of what they have. But again, when you look at the difference of the methodology, the precision and accuracy of both instruments are known, and so it's more of a preference in what you have available.
Yeah, and just to expand a little bit on that, and there was nothing wrong with the methods that were used previously, and nothing wrong with the methods that are used now. One of the main factors that caused the difference is the fact that 10 years ago there was no reference material available for THCA. Now the availability of that material, it's partly what has changed the field. Given the fact that couldn't create a calibration curve with THCA because there was no THC reference material available, so the labs had no other choice but to decarboxylate prior to analysis in order to do that. Now, because of the advances in obviously reference materials and technology, we're in a slightly a different scenario. Some may consider it better, some may not, but I think a lot of the changes have happened just because of advancements in science and reference materials.
All right, thank you so much. And with that, we are going to go ahead and close up today's webinar. We had 2 full hours of fantastic Q&A and back and forth discussion, and I just want to extend a great deal of gratitude to all of our presenters today for coming back, Renee, Mike, and Dr. Rodriguez-Cruz. Thank you, all three of you. We greatly appreciate your insight and everything that you're doing for the forensic industry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and also take the time to thank all of our attendees for joining us today. We do apologize about the technical issues that did happen at the beginning of the webinar. We hope everyone was able to get on and not have too many issues with today, but these webinars are simply not possible without your attendance and your support, so thank you for taking the time today to join us. As always, we do ask that you participate in our short survey. You will find that back on the main webinar page where you first came in. If you were able to log in there, we would definitely appreciate your feedback. We always try to use that information to make sure we are providing the best webinar experience possible to you, as well as adjust the content and in the way that we disseminate that out to your audience. This was kind of a different format for us to have a panel discussion and really get your comments and your questions answered. So we would like to hear what you, all our audience, thought about that today. Also, you will see in the chat that Tyler will be posting links to our social media outlets, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So if you're not following us there, definitely make sure you do that. We will also be posting links to our podcast as well as our website, where you can find all of our no-cost webinars, events, success stories, and reports that we're constantly putting out. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We did record today's event. We will be converting it into our archival version over the next few days, and we look forward to seeing everyone in our next webinar that will be held next week. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope you have a great afternoon.
Oh, thank you very much.